This is part 1 of 3 videos where we will learn how to create a clay thumb pot from scratch. The first thing we're going to do is look at creating the vessel, which is the main body of the pot without the lid or the base. Before we get started, there are some things you need to prepare in advance. So you'll need a lump of fresh clay of your choosing, a clay knife or a clay tool, a rolling pin, or in my case some PVC pipe, and some water. And just for reference, we are aiming to achieve a ball of clay about the same size as an apple or a tennis ball. So right now I'm going to remove the excess clay to one side. I don't need that right now, but we will need that later, so leave that there and let's get started. The first thing we need to do is create a clay ball. Now your instincts may tell you to roll it on the table. That's not a good idea because the table is flat. We're trying to create a 3D object that's round and smooth, so doing it this way will create flat spots and hard edges, and that's not what we need right now. The best way to achieve a ball of clay is to use the palm of our weak hand as it acts like a cup, and holding the ball of clay in the other hand, gently tap and rotate it several times until you achieve a nice smooth round ball. After a bit of work, you'll get to the stage where you find there's lumps and bumps and cracks all over the ball. It's not a problem, you just use the side of your thumb to gently push the clay over and smooth out that sphere. Something to be wary of while doing this is that your hands are quite warm and the clay will want to dry out very quickly, so you may have to add a touch of water here and there just to keep the ball nice and hydrated. So in just a couple minutes we've achieved a nice smooth round ball of clay, and just for reference, here is the apple from before. You should be aiming to have something along those lines. Like I said, it could be a tennis ball, maybe even an orange. I just happen to have an apple. Just before we move on to the next stage, let's have a quick look at a pot that I made earlier. So as you can see, I use my index finger to measure the thickness of the wall that I'm trying to achieve. What I'm going to do now is cut this pot in half using my clay knife and show you the cross section of the pot itself so you know what you're trying to achieve. We're looking for a kind of U shape in general, but it's really important that the thickness of the wall is consistent throughout to give us a good strong pot. This pot's about ½ an inch thick. That will give it great stability and strength. Any thicker, you run the risk of it blowing up in the kiln. Any thinner, it's going to be too fragile and won't support much material at all. So when we start pinching our clay, we are aiming to achieve the example on the left. The one on the right is an example of pinching too hard and it will most likely collapse or fall in on itself at some point. Now we need to create a cavity in this ball of clay, and we do this by gently pushing our thumb into the center of the ball. This is why they're called thumb pots, okay? We have to push it about halfway down, try to avoid going straight through and creating a hole, and with our index and middle finger, gently turn the ball and pinch as you turn. Take your time doing this. The more slight rotations and pinches that you make, the more even the thickness is going to be on all sides of the pot. If you rush this stage and pinch too hard, you'll end up making the walls of the clay too thin and it will look more like the example from the right and you'll have to start again. So this is the most important stage of the pot making. Once you're happy with the shape, spend a few minutes just using small amounts of water each time to smooth over any cracks, lumps or bumps that have occurred during that pinching process. It will never look perfect, but really that's what gives these pots that handmade quality, so don't worry too much about this. The time it'll take you to get a fully smooth surface might vary depending on the clay that you're using. I've got a standard grey buff clay here, but terracottas and porcelains and even air drying clay will all behave differently, so this could take 1 minute, this could take 5 minutes or even 10, but just take your time until you're happy with the result. Once you're happy with that, just give the vessel a little tap on the table once or twice to make a flat bottom so that it doesn't wobble all around. And this is useful in the next stage of the pot building. So I'll see you in the next video where we will make the base of the pot.